No one expected a slap to explode through a dazzling gala like that, loud enough to make the swaying crystal strands above tremble loud enough to jolt the hearts of hundreds of guests into a confused beat. But that moment was only the beginning of a night when every wall of power would be ripped open, exposing truths many had tried to bury. Ariana Wells stepped into the Beaumont Foundation Gala's grand hall like a quiet current cutting through a sea of pride. Warm gold light spilled over her neatly pinned hair, gliding across her soft yet steady shoulders, wrapped in a minimalist black gown, a dress with no glittering designer label, yet radiating a self-possession no amount of money could buy. She moved lightly, but each step carried an undercurrent, the kind of subtle tremor born from a strength she didn't yet know would be tested to its limit tonight. When Ariana approached the check-in counter, Chloe Hart lifted her gaze with the expression of someone who had already decided to place her in the wrong category from the first glance. A paper-thin smile, a voice cold as an overworked air conditioner. "Please proceed to the secondary check table," Chloe said, as if brushing away something unpleasant in her line of sight. Ariana heard a soft, sharp laugh behind her, just enough to remind her that her skin tone never entered rooms like these without dragging someone else's prejudice behind it. She simply replied, "My confirmation was approved in advance." Her voice was quiet, yet firm, calm, but edged with steel. In that instant, the air shifted as the Beaumont family entered. Their arrival surged across the red carpet like a wave of power. Victoria Beaumont led them wrapped in a silver gown and wearing the smile of someone far too accustomed to being worshipped. Every camera in the hall seemed to tilt toward her, and it took only a heartbeat for her eyes to land on Ariana, a small disruption in her perfectly curated evening. "Is there a problem here?" Victoria's voice glided through the air, sweet but sharper than shattered glass. Chloe softened immediately, her tone suddenly syrupy. "We're just verifying access to the premium section, ma'am." Victoria looked Ariana up and down, not observing but categorizing, judging, eliminating. Her eyes stalled for an extra beat at the black wristband, the markers of a standard guest, rather than the diamond tier she preferred to host. Her smile unfurled, delicate as mist and poisonous as a needle. "I hope my staff is perceptive enough to maintain tonight's standards." A sentence light as air, intended to slam a door in Ariana's face. Inside Ariana's mind, countless replies sparked, but she swallowed them. Since the days she stood in endless lines applying for scholarships at overcrowded public schools, she had learned one truth: silence could be the most terrifying answer to someone who looked down on you. But tonight, silence became the trap that made the world assume she was weak. Chloe stepped forward. "Please move to the right table so we can recheck your information." Ariana inhaled deeply, heat rising behind her nose as she restrained the anger, but her voice remained steady. "I don't owe anyone a second screening." The words rose, brushed the crystal ceiling, then fell like a perfectly aimed arrow. The room stopped laughing. Chloe's face stiffened, but it was Victoria's expression that changed the air, the slight curl of her lips, and the unmistakable irritation in her eyes, the inherited disdain of someone infuriated that the person she deemed beneath her dared to stand tall. And then, the unthinkable happened. Victoria stepped closer, so close that the expensive perfume she wore wrapped Ariana like a warning. "You people always make moments." She hissed each word, dripping like acid onto the marble floor. Ariana had barely opened her mouth when Victoria's hand swung upward to swift, clean, merciless. Crack! The sound tore through the Mozart piece, drifting overhead. A wine glass slipped from someone's hand. A few guests gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" Ariana's cheek burned, but inside she felt an icy void. She turned her face back to its original position, lifting her chin half an inch. No bending, no backing away, no breaking. In that suspended moment, Ariana's silence grew so vast it swallowed the entire ballroom. Chloe froze. Victoria stepped back, not out of regret, but from the shock of realizing she had acted that way in front of hundreds of witnesses. And while the crowd waited for Ariana to scream, to cry, or to flee, she simply opened her clutch. Inside was not paperwork, not evidence, but an ivory card with silver trim. Ariana handed it to the nearest attendant. "Take this to the general manager," she said, her voice soft as breath, but forged like tempered steel. "In 60 seconds he will decide who leaves this room." The attendant looked at the card hands, trembling, then rushed away almost at a run. That was when the ballroom understood the slap had not broken Ariana. It had triggered an earthquake. All around them, phones lifted. Live streams turned on, cameras focused. Eyes that had once been indifferent now locked on Ariana and Victoria, one standing silent as stone, the other trembling ever so slightly in her luxury gown. Somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered, "This night isn't ending the way they think." And they were right, because 60 seconds from now, the power of everyone in that room would be overturned by a thin card and a woman's unshakable dignity. The gala, a place people believed was ruled by diamonds and prestige, was about to witness history. And Ariana Wells, the woman who had just been slapped, was standing at its epicenter. 60 seconds may seem short, but inside the Beaumont hall they stretched like a verdict waiting to be delivered. As the attendant rushed toward the staff door with Ariana's card in hand, the air thickened until it felt like it could snap. The guests who had been smiling over champagne now stood frozen, holding their breath, as if any sound might cause them to miss something crucial. Victoria's slap still hung in the air like an open wound that refused to close. Ariana stood at the center of the room, the crystal lights pouring a calm, dignified glow across her face, a sharp contrast to the red blossoming on her cheek. But it was her silence that unsettled the room, not the silence of someone defeated, but of someone who knew she did not have to raise her voice to be heard. Victoria Beaumont stood angled toward her chest, rising and falling, the corners of her lips pulled tight as she struggled to hold together the shreds of her dignity. She knew every camera was on her, and the pressure only made her layer on more of the icy composure she was famous for. But her eyes, despite her efforts, carried an unmistakable flicker of unease. Chloe Hart stood just behind her, one hand resting on her tablet and trembling slightly. She wondered if she had crossed a line, if she had abused her authority in Victoria's name, and would soon have to face the consequences. Ariana let her hand drop to her side, tilting her head slightly, her eyes fixed on the staff door where the attendant had disappeared. She counted the beats of her heart one by one, precise, as if she were calculating the exact moment a fuse would ignite in midair. Guests began whispering. Their hushed voices rippled through the hall like electricity traveling through copper wire. "Who is she? What was that card? Why does the general manager have to decide who leaves?" A woman in a red gown murmured to her friend, "I've seen that expression before on people who have real power, the kind you don't have to brag about." An older man with a silver beard nodded slowly, eyes locked on Ariana. She's no ordinary guest who stands that still after being slapped. Each whisper was a spark feeding the growing tension in the room. But the biggest spark was still approaching. The staff door swung open. The attendant returned, but he wasn't alone. Beside him was Daniel Rhodes, the event's general manager, his dark suit slightly askew, his breath short, as if he had run up from a lower floor. His eyes swept the room before landing on Ariana. In that single moment, his expression changed from confusion to recognition, to alarm, and finally, to something close to reverence. The shift drained the room of sound. Victoria immediately stepped forward, her voice sharp as a blade. "Daniel, you're just in time. We have a disruptive guest causing a scene and undermining." Daniel raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. The gesture sent a pulse of shock across Victoria's face, the vein at her temple tightening. It was the first time in years anyone had dared interrupt her in public. "Mrs. Beaumont," Daniel said, his voice raspy but clear. "We have a serious problem." Chloe frowned. "She's just a standard guest. I was following procedure." Daniel turned to her, and his stare sliced through the last of her confidence. "No, Miss Hart. She is not a standard guest." He held up the card. "And this is not a card issued to ordinary attendees." Guests leaned in, trying to see the details but unable to make out the text. Ariana didn't move, watching everything unfold with the composure of someone who had already planned every move on the board. Daniel took a deep breath and addressed the room. "I need everyone to remain silent. This is a matter of upper executive authority." Victoria let out a thin laugh, clinging to her slipping control. "Daniel, you're blowing this out of proportion. One person, not one person." Daniel cut her off again. "A person with top-tier classified clearance in the national funding system." Every trace of sound vanished. Ariana lifted an eyebrow slightly. She knew this moment was coming, though she hadn't expected Daniel to state it so openly. Victoria scoffed. "Don't tell me she's a government employee." "No." Daniel turned to Ariana, lowering his voice to a near whisper. "Miss Wells, would you like to explain it to them yourself?" Silence hit the room like a falling weight, thick and unmoving. Ariana stepped forward. Just one step, but it was enough to send nearly 20 cameras snapping upward and dozens of phones switching into record mode instantly. She swept her gaze across the hall, her eyes calm, unshaken, the eyes of someone who had faced countless closed doors, yet still learned how to walk through them. "I did not come here to cause a disturbance," she said, her voice low, yet carrying effortlessly to the back of the room. "I came for one purpose: to support the National STEM Education Initiative this event claims to champion." A few people exhaled sharply, others stiffened. But Ariana continued. "You asked who I am." She looked directly at Victoria. "I am the person responsible for approving the $2 billion funding this event needs to continue." Victoria stepped back. Chloe's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Daniel bowed his head almost instinctively. But before Ariana could say more, phones around the room chimed. Not hers, but dozens belonging to the guests. Messages lit up screens everywhere. News alerts spreading like digital wildfire. Ariana Wells, CEO of Wells Aerosystems, spotted at Beaumont Gala. A wave of recognition swept the room. "She's the CEO, my God! Wells Aerosystems, aren't they, negotiating a new defense contract? Wait, does that mean?" a man blurted out. "They just slapped their primary investor." Ariana scanned the room, her expression unshaken. "I came here for the children," she said softly. "But I cannot support a place that fails to distinguish between standards and prejudice." She brushed a finger gently across her still flushed cheek. especially when those standards are enforced through violence. For a heartbeat, the room fell into a silence so deep it felt like the floor had dropped away. And then, just before the eruption, everyone understood the truth. The slap had not landed on Ariana Wells alone. It had landed on the Beaumont empire itself. And tonight, in the span of a single blink, power was about to change hands. The moment the name Wells Aerosystems echoed through the ballroom, the entire space dropped into a vacuum. The orchestra might as well have vanished. No one heard the clinking glasses, the soft glide of heels across marble, or even their own breathing. All that remained was the sound of hundreds of hearts pounding as they collectively awakened to a truth none of them were prepared to confront. Ariana Wells stood there, not boasting, not trembling, not meeting violence with anger, but with a calm so controlled it bordered on unreal, the kind of calm shaped by a lifetime of being underestimated. And now that the truth had surfaced, even that calmness became a weapon sharp enough to make her opponents step back. Victoria Beaumont was the first to lose her voice, her face held firm for years by Botox, and the confidence of someone accustomed to unchallenged power twitched as if stretched by an invisible force. You're lying," she stammered, revealing fear for the first time. "Someone like you would never." Ariana tilted her head, her gaze sharp, but not hateful. "Someone like me would never hold $2 billion in funding." The question fell like a blade, cracking the mask Victoria had worn so effortlessly for so long. Whispers ignited across the room like sparks leaping onto dry wood. "She's really the CEO. Wells Aerosystems works directly with the government. This is not small. This is national level. My God." They slapped the person coordinating a defense budget. The murmurs grew louder as guests scrolled through their phones, eyes widening at every new headline. A blonde woman nearly dropped her champagne when she read her screen. "She's the direct advisor to the Department of Defense on the Sky Shield project." This is catastrophic. Faces that moments ago carried haughty pride now lowered, as if trying to swallow back the arrogance they had displayed. The ballroom built to honor the elite had become a theater, where the downfall of those very elites was unfolding in real time. Ariana remained still, her eyes deep, piercing through the glitter and glamour to what lay beneath. Some guests avoided her gaze, unable to withstand its quiet power. Others stared at her with a kind of awe, wondering how a woman could endure a slap like that, and still stand with such unshakable grace. Daniel Rhodes, the general manager, stepped forward, his voice soft but carrying effortlessly through the suffocating silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have just received confirmation from our highest-level partners. Ariana Wells is not merely a VIP guest. She is the person who approved the funding for tonight's event. She is," he swallowed hard, "the primary benefactor of our scholarship foundation." A sharp gasp burst from a group near the stage, like someone had been punched. A man in a grey suit turned pale. They slapped their main donor. This is financial suicide." Ariana slowly turned toward the crowd. Every movement her body made was elegant and commanding, not choreographed, just the natural result of living a lifetime in rooms where people believed she didn't belong. "I did not come here to embarrass anyone," she said, her voice soft, but honed like a masterfully forged blade. "I came for the children waiting for their chance. But I cannot stand by while arrogance is allowed to strike at the dignity of another human being." Phones vibrated in a chaotic chorus. Screens lit up with clips spreading across TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook, each showing the sharp crack of Victoria's slap and Ariana's impossible composure. One video skyrocketing in views carried the caption, "This is not just a slap, it is a lesson in real power." Chloe Hart, the one who started it all, turned ghost white, stepping back, as if hoping to dissolve into the crowd. I didn't know. I didn't mean Ariana looked at her. Not with anger. Not with forgiveness. Just with truth, a truth so stark that Chloe bowed her head, collapsing under the weight of her own prejudice. Then something else happened. Victoria's phone rang loudly. She fumbled, opened it, and her lips drained of color. On the screen was an urgent email from the Beaumont Industries Board, crisis escalating. Stock value down 4% in 10 minutes. Immediate action required. A man whispered, "They're already losing money." Ariana lightly touched her clutch, a small gesture but enough to make several hearts tighten, because everyone understood what that meant. Inside that clutch was the power to shake the national financial markets if she wished. Daniel Rhodes spoke cautiously. "Miss Wells, would you like to leave the event? I can close off the entire area to ensure your safety." Ariana shook her head. No. One word. But stronger than every argument spoken that night. "I will leave when I choose, not because I was insulted, but because this place must understand that dignity is not something you strike and smooth over afterward." Silence fell again, but now it was reverent. And then suddenly, Ariana's phone lit up. The caller ID glowed clearly, United States Secretary of Defense. The entire room inhaled at once. Victoria whispered, "Impossible." But Ariana lifted the phone to her ear. "Yes, I'm fine," she said calmly. "The incident has been documented. No need to dispatch security personnel." A pause. Then Ariana replied, "Understood. Proceed with the contract revision and confirm the upcoming session with NATO." When she ended the call, the power dynamic in the room had fundamentally shifted. Those who once stood on the summit of influence were now dangling at the edge of a cliff. Those who had dismissed her now saw her for what she truly was, a force capable of toppling the Beaumont dynasty with a single decision. Ariana lifted her gaze, her voice soft, but razor-sharp. "Tonight you did not strike only my face. You struck your own future." Victoria choked out. What are you going to do to us?" Ariana answered, "I don't have to do anything. You will do it yourselves." And in that instant, the downfall of the Beaumont family truly began. The moment Ariana ended the call with the Secretary of Defense, the atmosphere in the room shifted, as if someone had turned the wind itself. Every face that once held arrogance, every person who believed they had the right to judge her, now resembled statues under a harsh spotlight, revealing every crack and every flake of false grandeur built from privilege and pride. All eyes locked on Ariana Wells, not because of her simple black gown, not because of the fading red mark on her cheek, but because she stood there at the center of a storm of power without needing to summon a single bolt of lightning. Then the phones in the room began vibrating all at once, like an earthquake triggered by notification alerts. Each message lighting up a screen chipped another piece off the Beaumont empire. The headline that struck the hardest, red breaking newswoman slapped at Beaumont Gala, confirmed to be CEO Ariana Wells of Wells Aerosystems, primary investor in $2 billion deal with Beaumont Industries. A man near the bar dropped his glass of whiskey, and the sound of shattering crystal cracked through the silence, like the punctuation of fate. A young businesswoman gasped. "My God, she's the reason this event even exists, and they treated her like that." Every whisper, every stunned breath was an arrow piercing the thin fabric of the Beaumont's reputation. But the real collapse wasn't happening in the ballroom. It was happening outside, where the internet erupted like wildfire. Within minutes, dozens of clips of Victoria's slap were uploaded at lightning speed. Captions flooded the digital world. They slapped the wrong woman. The wealthy attack their own investor. The dignity of a black woman brings down a dynasty. These videos weren't just being viewed. They were being shared, stitched, analyzed, debated, turning into a tidal wave, sweeping away every attempt at control. Gala guests began glancing around nervously, unsure which direction to move to avoid being implicated. Some tried turning their phones off, but the alerts kept flashing headlines glowing blood red. Beaumont stock drops 6%. Experts warn defense deal may collapse. Wells Aerosystems reconsidering partnership. Victoria stood frozen. For the first time in her life, she felt her legs unsteady beneath her. She tried lifting her chin, the gesture that once projected the authority of a queen, but now it only made her look like someone desperately clinging to the last scrap of dignity. Miss Wells Victoria said, her voice trembling like a frayed violin string. "We can come to an arrangement. I believe there may have been a misunderstanding. Tonight has been chaotic, and Ariana looked straight at her eyes, filled not with anger but with truth. There was no misunderstanding, Mrs. Beaumont. There was a choice." Victoria attempted a smile, but it cracked instantly. "We didn't know who you were, and that is the problem," Ariana replied, her voice calm as still water before a storm. "You should not need to know who I am to treat me with a basic amount of respect." At that moment, Daniel Rhodes received another call. He glanced at the screen and paled. "Oh my God," he whispered. "What now?" a guest asked, their voice quivering with fear and morbid curiosity. Daniel drew a shaky breath. "The Beaumont Industries Board is holding an emergency meeting. Dubai and Tokyo have just pulled out of the partnership." The room erupted like waves crashing against rocks, gasps, murmurs, sharp inhales, spreading everywhere. Ariana said nothing. She simply let the truth do its work. From Victoria's side, her son Grant Beaumont stormed forward, face red with fury and panic. "Mum, this is getting out of control. Media outlets are saying we assaulted a defense advisor. CNN just ran an emergency segment." Victoria yanked her hand out of his grip, though her fingers trembled violently. "No one is allowed to film. Turn the cameras off," she shouted, but the command sounded like the useless order of a dethroned queen. Dozens of phones continued recording. One live stream camera zoomed in on Ariana's face. "Ms. Wells, do you have any message for the public regarding this incident?" The room sank into absolute silence. Ariana lifted her gaze, and in that single second, she shook millions watching online. "I have only one thing to say." Her voice was low, clear, and strong as stone pillars. "Real power does not belong to the one who can strike another. It belongs to the one who can still stand after being struck." An invisible wave swept through the room. Someone placed a hand over their mouth. An older man whispered, "That is a line people will quote for generations." But Ariana wasn't done. "And you ask what I plan to do after tonight." She touched the faint red mark on her cheek. "I do not need to retaliate. The world is already doing that for me." At that exact moment, dozens of phones rang simultaneously. The biggest alert yet flashed across every screen. "Breaking news: Wells Aerosystems officially withdraws from $2 billion deal with Beaumont Industries." Victoria collapsed slightly, as if the marble floor had turned to quicksand beneath her feet. Grant cursed and threw his phone. Chloe Hart covered her face. Daniel Rhodes stood motionless, as if struck by lightning. But Ariana simply stepped back, half a pace, not to avoid anything, but to clear just enough space for the world to witness the consequences the Beaumonts had created with their own hands. Tonight, she said, you believed you slapped an insignificant black woman. She lifted her chin, her composure lighting the entire room, brighter than the chandeliers above. But in truth, you slapped an entire empire. And at that very moment, beyond the grand doors of the ballroom, came the rising roar of reporters' helicopters and broadcast vans. The world had arrived, and Ariana's story had just become a global reckoning. The chaotic roar of the media outside the ballroom surged in like a storm, blending with the constant vibration of phones, frantic whispers, and the sharp breaths of those who had just witnessed the truth laid bare. Ariana Wells remained at the epicenter of that seismic moment, unmoved, as if the world itself spun around her. Light from dozens of live-stream cameras reflected off the still visible red mark on her cheek, turning the bruise into a symbol of the confrontation between false power and real dignity. In a corner of the room, Victoria Beaumont struggled to stay upright, her legs shaking, as if carrying the weight of a crumbling empire beneath her. No, this cannot destroy everything we built in just a few minutes, she whispered more to herself than anyone else. But the truth had already struck the room faster than any reassurance could. A young guest ran into the crowd shouting, "Everyone breaking news. Beaumont stock just dropped another 3% in 5 minutes. Instantly phones lit up with a barrage of alerts. Breaking Saudi investment group withdraws from partnership. Tokyo Aerospace cancels tomorrow's signing. Beaumont Industries faces potential liquidity freeze." Each headline struck the gilded walls that had stood for 3 generations of Beaumont arrogance, like a hammer against gold. Daniel Rhodes moved toward Victoria, but she shoved him back, her breath coming in short gasps of fear. They can't do this. We are the Beaumonts." Daniel met her gaze, part pity, part icy resolve. "No one out there cares who you are, ma'am. The world only cares what you have done." In another corner, Chloe Hart cried. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. "I didn't know I wasn't trying. I was following procedure." Her feeble excuses dissolved into the air as a group of guests stared at her, coldly eyes of people who knew that very soon they would have to pick sides to save themselves. Ariana stepped lightly toward the center of the ballroom without an escort, without raising her voice. Her presence alone carved out space, as if the entire room made way for a column of light gradually piercing the darkness. "You think today was a shock?" Ariana's voice carried calm, yet sweeping through the crowd like a cold wind. "But for countless others out there, those who have been treated with the same disdain I faced, this is simply the truth exposed." Guests exchanged glances, blushing, bowing their heads. Across from Ariana, Victoria clenched her sequined clutch until her knuckles whitened. "What are you doing? Do you want my family to collapse?" "This is a misunderstanding. An accident." Ariana stepped forward, stopping 2 paces from Victoria. "An accident." She tilted her face slightly, making the mark of the slap glow more clearly under the lights. "When you looked at me like I did not belong here. When you slapped me in the ballroom. When you assumed your status allowed you to do this." Victoria opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "This is not an accident." Mrs. Beaumont Ariana continued her voice, dropping deep, silencing the room. "This is nature. An event staffer ran in, face pale. "Urgent, CNN just reported. Senator Charles Beaumont is being called before the Ethics Committee regarding this incident." A ripple of shock swept through the crowd. A guest shook his head. "My God, the whole family is being toppled." Ariana did not smile. She did not revel in it, but she did not conceal the truth. "Consequences do not choose anyone," she said, her gaze fixed on Victoria. "We choose consequences for ourselves." Then the buzz of social media rose again from countless devices. A TikTok surpassed 2 million views, captioned, "When the wealthy think they can strike the cheap item, but it's the owner of the entire store." Another live stream appeared on a large screen behind the bar connected by a guest's wireless feed. Analysis why Victoria's slap shook the defense market. Guests almost gasped as the camera highlighted the red mark on Ariana's face in a financial news segment. Ariana did not look up. She did not need to. The world spoke for her. In a corner, Grant Beaumont dialed his legal assistant. "We have to block all content immediately. We must sue. We have to." "You cannot sue the internet," the assistant replied, voice dripping with desperate irony. "You should pray." Grant slammed his fist into a marble column, wincing from the pain. "Mum, we are done for." But Ariana did not strike back. She simply stood, tall shoulders broad, carrying the voices of those who had been beaten, insulted, and dismissed by the very people now trembling before her. "I do not demand that you fear me," she said. "I demand that you learn." A young female entrepreneur nearby whispered, "She is not just strong, she is right." Many other guests nodded. For the first time that night, Ariana was not the only one standing on her side. And then, like the final drop filling an already full glass, a megaphone blared from outside the hall. "Protesters have arrived. We must secure the entrances." Victoria almost screamed. "Protesters over this." The event assistant swallowed hard. "Ma'am, they are chanting, 'Justice for Ariana.' Numbers are increasing rapidly." Ariana closed her eyes for a moment, not out of joy, not out of triumph, but because she understood that everything had gone beyond the personal. The room grew stifling as Daniel received another call. He listened for a few seconds, then shook slightly. Beaumont stock just dropped 9% in after-hours trading. A deep silence fell over the room, like darkness swallowing the city before a storm. Then Ariana opened her eyes, and in a voice so calm it was almost terrifying, she said, "This is only the beginning." Victoria nearly cried. "What do you want from us?" Ariana replied with 4 words, "A better world." And at that very moment, the ballroom doors burst open. Dozens of reporters poured in. Flashbulbs exploded. Every microphone turned toward Ariana Wells, and history began to be written right there. The moment Ariana Wells stepped out from the center of the ballroom, her steps light yet forceful, like waves crashing against cliffs, the world outside seemed to awaken all at once. News spread across every platform: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Reddit, LinkedIn, each acting as a separate observatory, capturing every instant of the slap and her chilling composure. Clips racked up millions of views, shared continuously, becoming a global phenomenon within minutes. Broadcast channels rushed to cover the story live from the gala, while financial outlets immediately posted shocking headlines. "Black CEO strikes back at billion-dollar family $2 billion deal." Cancelled the red lettering signaling imminent collapse. Meanwhile, in Beaumont Industries boardrooms from Manhattan to London, executives panicked phones, vibrating non-stop with alerts from Asian, European, and Middle Eastern investors. They just withdrew all funds, an executive lawyer exclaimed. stock prices plummeted, reports showing that within the first hour, the corporation's value had dropped nearly 10%, hundreds of millions evaporating. Grant Beaumont ran frantically through the rooms shouting, "We need a rescue strategy immediately." Victoria Beaumont stood frozen, eyes, vacant hands, trembling around her phone, still receiving alert messages, feeling her power slip away with each passing second. Ariana sat quietly in her sedan outside, responding to messages from her lawyer and assistant while observing the storm she had unleashed. She did not exult. She did not flaunt. All she did was remain calm, letting the truth speak her power. Live clips from the gala continued to spread hashtags Beaumont collapse and dignity wins, dominating social media with millions watching live. Police press television, all information branches, were poised to update, while financial experts analyzed the damage and potential long-term market effects. International partners called urgently, Dubai, Tokyo, London, even Brussels, all demanding clarification on whether the $2 billion deal could proceed. Daniel Rhodes, the general manager, stood silently beside Ariana, eyes on his phone, streaming continuous messages from government offices, the Finance Ministry, and the Department of Defense confirm authority and safety for Ariana Wells. No interference allowed. A wave of shock swept through Beaumont Industries' boardroom as the news arrived. Wells Aerosystems had withdrawn all investment. Sighs, curses, papers hitting desks mixed with the constant vibration of phones. Eleanor Beaumont, the matriarch, slid down her chair, face pale sweat pouring, as if 3 generations of effort had vanished in an instant. In-house lawyers tried to reassure her, but Ariana needed to do nothing. Her power executed itself automatically. On social media, videos of the slap and Ariana's words, "I don't owe you a second audition," went viral, cited millions of times. Luxury brands associated with Beaumont quickly released statements. Hermes, Cartier, Tiffany all cut ties and withdrew sponsorship, while banking and insurance partners began reviewing commitments with the corporation. Outside the gala hall, protests spread, activists holding banners reading, "Dignity is priceless, justice for Ariana," appeared at Beaumont building entrances. Governments, financial organizations, and defense agencies monitored closely, understanding that every decision related to the Beaumonts was no longer internal, but an event capable of impacting international markets. Ariana, seated in her sedan, observed everything quietly. Each heartbeat measured each tap on her phone, sending instructions as preparation for the next steps. Inside the hall, Daniel Rhodes approached Victoria, his voice soft yet commanding. "Do you understand? The world is seeing exactly what you just did." Victoria bowed her head, tears streaming, knowing there was no turning back. Grant shouted, "We need to control the media. We need to—" Ariana only offered a faint, subtle smile, not boastful, but enough to steel the hearts of anyone who had believed power belonged solely to wealth and prestige. "You thought that striking at my dignity would make me fall," Ariana said, her voice even deep, cold, and strong. "But it has awakened the entire world. Dignity is not to be bought, nor enforced through power or violence. It is to be lived." Her words echoed, touching every mind in the hall, spreading through cameras, phones, and across the globe, becoming a lesson in the power of dignity and the impact of justice. While the Beaumonts stood frozen, Ariana began executing the next steps, notifying all relevant authorities of the withdrawal, securing the remaining investments, preparing legal and financial actions, and scheduling international meetings to send the message that dignity, ethics, and fairness are not mere theory, but standards the world will follow. The media storm had only just begun. Ariana Wells needed neither shouting nor argument. With her calm precision alone, she sent the entire Beaumont family and their associates reeling, powerless, and fearful before the true strength of a person standing tall amid injustice, maintaining dignity, while the world watched, learned, and shared, turning the lesson of power and justice into a global legacy from this very moment. Calls, emails, and alert messages from all Beaumont Industries branches and international partners flooded in like an unstoppable tide. Stocks fell continuously. Investment funds scrambled to withdraw foreign investors, sent urgent warnings painting a comprehensive picture of chaos. Any financial advisor would acknowledge the $2 billion deal had been shaken from the very moment Ariana Wells left the gala hall. Without any further action, her presence and authority alone had rattled the Beaumont family's power network to its core. Inside their offices, Victoria Beaumont trembled, realizing that every effort to control the media, every attempt to cover up or placate public opinion, was meaningless against the reach of social media, where each clip of the slap, each calm statement from Ariana spread globally from TikTok to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, forcing shareholders to sit still, official partners to pause contracts and strategy meetings in London, Tokyo, and Dubai to be suspended in panic. Daniel Rhodes stood beside Ariana, eyes serious but composed, monitoring her every move while preparing legal strategies, fund withdrawals, and damage control. Ariana, face calm, yet eyes flashing with quiet power, needed no raised voice, no overt assertion. Each precise, subtle action made the previously untouchable network crumble. Her lawyers immediately sent withdrawal notices, informing partners that all investments would be reviewed and preparing legal protections. Clips of the slap aired on television office screens and virtual meetings, each frame proving that real power does not belong to wealth or title, but to the ability to uphold dignity and make the world recognize it. Meanwhile, Grant Beaumont and the rest of the family panicked, calling every partner to salvage the situation, but all calls were met with delays or refusals, making it clear that their previous authority and privilege were mere paper walls against the force of truth and dignity. Ariana Wells remained standing, every gesture exuding complete control, from opening her clutch to review legal documents to reading messages from investment agencies, each tap a warning. Instantly, international media updated the story, a flood of articles analyzing Beaumont Industries' collapse, from lost defense contracts, plummeting stock values, investor withdrawals, to incalculable reputational damage. Through private channels, Ariana directed her lawyers to confirm withdrawals, secure records against interference from the family, and convey a powerful message that decisions are now based on dignity and law, no longer games of power or privilege. Beaumont Industries executive meetings descended into chaos, shareholders shouting the board, wrestling with plummeting market reports, minute by minute, legal teams calling frantically to reverse the tide. Yet all efforts were blocked by Ariana's pre-prepared measures, as withdrawal notices were sent to every branch office, leaving executives powerless. Social media exploded more than ever. Hashtags Beaumont collapse, dignity wins. Ariana Wells flooded feeds, clips were segmented comments demanding justice, and dignity spread to millions worldwide, creating unprecedented public pressure. Outside the gala hall, immediate protests appeared, signs reading, "Justice for Ariana," and "Dignity is priceless" lined the streets, emphasizing that the story was no longer internal, but a global event. Ariana silently observed everything, saying nothing. Her presence alone, Each precise action, each measured step, made everyone recognize that she held true control. What seemed like a slap that would break her had instead paved the way for the total collapse of an empire built on arrogance and false power. And in that moment, every elite, from guests to the Beaumont family, felt as if they stood on quicksand, while Ariana Wells, with absolute composure, became the only pillar amid the chaos, and the world watched, learned, and shared, turning a lesson on power, dignity, and justice into a global legacy. The moment the media and public attention exploded, Ariana Wells entered the hotel lobby, a place where just a few hours earlier she had been dismissed, now completely silent, and all eyes turned toward her. Each step she took emphasized power without a noise, each gesture calm yet deliberate, as if everyone held their breath to witness what was about to unfold. Olivia Gray, a prominent blogger, continued to pan her camera, capturing every moment, her lips trembling with excitement and astonishment, while her assistant Ethan Brooks adjusted the angle to ensure the entire lobby was in view. Mia Bennett, the embodiment of authority beneath her composed exterior, stepped to the center eyes, icy, overshadowing Mark Sanders, who had thought he could mock her. She opened her wallet, pulling out a sleek black credit card, embossed with her name, along with elegant identification documents, clearly asserting her authority. Mark stared in disbelief, suspicion etched on his face, as if encountering something extraterrestrial. "Miss Bennett, is that correct?" Mark taunted. A wave of whispers swept the lobby, now louder, as guests watched the scene unfold. Ryan Mitchell, standing behind Mark, attempted to display blind loyalty. "Mr. Sanders, we should verify her credentials," his tone theatrical and insincere. Ryan placed the card into a small safe at the front desk, each movement staged to humiliate. "This is anti-fraud policy," he said, eyes still fixed on Mark. Mia Bennett did not flinch, her sharp gaze locked on Ryan, each word a prelude to the storm about to erupt. "This is your final warning, Ryan. Your decisions will have consequences." Ryan blinked, trying to reclaim confidence yet tense. A security team formed a semicircle behind Mia, awaiting Mark's signal. Mark raised his hand, but Mia did not move, only offering a cold, precise smile. "You will regret this," she said. "Don't say I didn't warn you." Mark Jessica Morgan and Ryan Sanders did not realize that they had just opened the door to their own collapse. Mia was no ordinary guest. She controlled Grand Skyline, the hotel chain they served, while Olivia and Ethan continued to stream live Olivia's voice, shaking with righteous anger. "Everyone, we are witnessing an unprecedented humiliation at Grand Skyline Hotel." Olivia pressed go-live eyes, following every detail, heartbeat tense, and in that instant, the storm spread. Comments flooded viewers' screens. "Call the press, this is direct discrimination. She is unbelievably composed." James Mitchell, a travel blogger, typed swiftly on his tablet, "Discrimination in real time, Grand Meridian's shameful display," spreading across hotel industry forums. Coleman, the manager, recognized the viral moment he had inadvertently created, amplifying attention further, while Mia, standing still, remained the center of it all, needing neither shouting nor proving herself. Every step, glance, and silence forced Mark and his colleagues into fear. Carter's phone buzzed continuously, live viewers skyrocketing hashtag Grand Meridian racism trending locally. Mia, once dismissed and ridiculed, now stood with absolute authority, controlling the situation with calm logic. "These staff misjudged my position and authority," she said, her voice calm yet commanding. "And now they will answer for every action." Tension peaked as the security team prepared to execute orders. Yet Mia held the final decision. She walked step by step through the lobby eyes, scanning every person, every action, every expression, reading their minds and determining their fate. The once crowded lobby fell into a strange silence. Everyone understood they were witnessing a justice unprecedented. Each step, glance, and word from Mia was an unassailable judgment. Justice was present false power exposed. Olivia Gray continued, panning her camera voice, trembling as she told viewers, "She is the owner standing right in front of us, and every decision today will determine the fate of those who underestimated her." Mia paused at the center of the lobby, raising her hand to command all employees who erred report to the conference room immediately. No one dared resist. Every eye was on her, stunned by authority that required no display. As the staff stepped out, their faces a mixture of fear, shame, and awareness that their careers were being decided in that instant. More stood without smiling or boasting, maintaining absolute silence. Yet every movement conveyed a message: no one may disrespect another's dignity or authority, and wrongdoing carries consequences. The hotel lobby became a witness to systemic change, the power of dignity, and the dawn of a new era where justice and ethics prevailed over privilege or prejudice. Every tap, every gaze, every step today would be recorded, shared, and spread, becoming an unforgettable lesson on true power and the responsibility that accompanies it. The moment Ariana Wells' authority was revealed, not only the Beaumont family, but the entire international hospitality, finance, and political sectors trembled. Every institution, corporation, and partner realized that decisions built on prejudice and arrogance could not withstand true dignity and competence. Livestream clips capturing her walking through the lobby, presenting her card, and ordering staff to act immediately went viral, with millions around the world watching, commenting, sharing, and questioning how power is exercised in major corporations. Lawyers, fund managers, shareholders, and journalists continuously received messages from Wells Aero Systems security and legal offices notifying that any misconduct was being recorded and would be addressed. Major investment funds withdrew, Capital Beaumont's stock plummeted, and international partners from Dubai, Tokyo, and London suspended all contracts, creating an unprecedented picture of collapse. Ariana maintained absolute composure. Every step across the lobby carried authority, her gaze sweeping each staff member, guest camera, and notification on her phone. Without shouting or coercion, her presence alone silenced the room, leaving everyone acutely aware that real power does not lie in a slap or family reputation, but in skill, dignity, and how one wields them. From afar, social media erupted. Hashtags dignity wins. Ariana Wells' Beaumont collapse dominated every platform, accumulating millions of views, shares, and comments. Financial analysts published pieces on the sudden collapse of a major corporation. Media outlets reported continuously on withdrawn investments, falling stock prices, disrupted defense contracts, and analyzed how one individual could reshape an entire power system through dignity and decisiveness. Inside the lobby, Victoria and Grant Beaumont trembled helpless, unsure how to salvage the situation. Chloe Hart stepped back, trying to remain composed, her face pale, while Daniel Rhodes stood near Ariana, eyes tracking every move, each phone tap and directive becoming precise legal action, ensuring the entire flawed system built by the family would be controlled and rectified fairly. Guests remained frozen, many holding their breath, sensing the weight of history unfolding before them, whispers and startled glances spreading through the room. Ariana, in a calm yet commanding voice, sent a message: real power does not belong to those who struck her, but to those who maintain dignity, transform injustice into a lesson, and possess the strength to change an entire system. Each step, subtle smile, unwavering gaze, and the clutch in her hand became symbols observed, analyzed, and learned from by millions. Outside the lobby, reporters, cameras, drones, and phones captured the scene, broadcasting it globally, making anyone witnessing realize how the power of a single individual can create systemic change. While Beaumont shareholders, partners, lawyers, and employees reeled in panic, Ariana remained silent, calm but authoritative. Each phone tap, each message, each legal directive executed swiftly and precisely, ensuring any misconduct was recorded and addressed. Clips and images circulated across social media, international news, financial reports, and live broadcasts, turning the story into a global phenomenon, delivering an unforgettable lesson on power, dignity, and justice. Ariana did not shout or rage, yet her presence caused the entire Beaumont empire to collapse in public view, forcing those who had once despised her to recognize that a woman who maintains dignity and decisiveness can alter an entire system. International investment funds, partners, shareholders, and government agencies began implementing control measures, re-evaluating processes, adhering to new ethical standards, and reconsidering contracts, investments, and agreements. Ariana, observing from the center, using only her gaze and composure, made everyone understand that real power doesn't come from wealth or status, but from the ability to hold one's dignity and convert it into global influence. Every action, step, phone tap, and word noted and disseminated, creating an unstoppable domino effect. In that moment, the entire elite media, international partners, and public recognized that a new era had begun, where dignity, justice, and responsibility became the standard, teaching those who had underestimated her that arrogance and false power can be defeated by the calm, precise, and decisive action of one individual in the right place at the right time. And Ariana Wells became a global symbol of power, combined with dignity, opening a new chapter for the entire system, transforming the story from a personal event into a legacy, a lesson for all generations on authority, responsibility, and justice. As the media storm settled, and the crystal lights in the gala hall no longer trembled with tension, Ariana Wells did not leave with a sense of personal victory, but with a long-term vision for the world she wanted to build. She stepped out of the hotel, head held high, walking firmly across the red carpet, still imprinted with history. Every eye following her, every camera fixed on her, witnessing the arrival of a symbol without the need for proclamations, or shouting simply through presence and absolute calm. Outside, global media reported continuously, social channels and live news updates, broadcasting Wells Aerosystems had cancelled the entire deal with Beaumont Industries. International investment funds suspended activity, stock prices plummeted. Investors reacted sharply, creating an unprecedented financial shock. Beaumont's lawyers and managers scrambled for emergency meetings, trying to control the fallout, but all efforts were futile. Clips of the slap, Ariana's calm gaze, and the card she handed to the general manager were analyzed frame by frame, shared across platforms, becoming lessons on true power and how dignity can overturn seemingly untouchable forces. Ariana stood silently, without boast or smile, yet every gesture, step, glance, and word made the entire Beaumont family falter. realizing that arrogance cannot survive when true capability and dignity are placed above all else. Outside reporters live cameras, drones, and phones captured every moment, while hashtags Dignity Wins, Ariana Wells, Beaumont Collapse flooded timelines with millions of views, shares and comments forming a global phenomenon, forcing brands, partners, shareholders, and government agencies to adjust policies, standards, and procedures to align with the new benchmark Ariana had set. Every step, every breath, every furrowed brow became a lesson on power and responsibility, teaching that justice, dignity, and standards are no longer theoretical, and that decisions based on prejudice will bear consequences. Ariana continued toward her black sedan eyes, never leaving the hall as those who had once underestimated her bowed, trembled, and felt powerless before the reality that they had witnessed the strength of dignity prevailing over false power. She entered the car, locked the doors, and calmly surveyed Manhattan city lights, sparkling like reflections of the future. She envisioned a world where dignity, ethics, and justice reign supreme, where wrongdoing is held accountable, and those who stand tall, firm, and righteous change the rules. Her phone vibrated notifications from the Secretary of Defense and international partners, displaying clearly all actions related to Wells Aerosystems and its investments would be monitored, protected, and managed, according to the new ethical standards Ariana established. She smiled softly, not from triumph, but knowing that her next step was to build a legacy, a global standard turning today's events into lessons for generations to come, ushering in an era where power no longer depends on privilege or wealth, but on dignity, integrity, and responsibility. She gazed toward the horizon, where light danced across skyscrapers, and whispered to herself, "Grace must have the last word, a reminder that true power is not destruction or revenge, but the ability to create guide and leave a better world for those who will follow." With each measured breath and moment of calm, Ariana Wells closed the gala night, yet opened a new era where one person's actions can transform an entire system, topple arrogant empires, and establish new standards where dignity cannot be stripped away. Justice becomes a guiding principle, and everyone can learn that standing tall, steadfast, and righteous is true power, and the world will never again view authority through the same lens. From the perspective of a human behavior expert in power dynamics, Ariana Wells's story demonstrates that true authority is not built solely on wealth, fame, or reputation, but also on the ability to maintain dignity and standards even when faced with disdain, insult, and immense pressure from those with privilege. When an individual is courageous enough to stand firm and wield the power of dignity, they not only transform the immediate situation, but can create ripple effects on a global scale, forcing systems once thought invulnerable to adjust and comply with new standards. This story is not just about a slap or a cancelled deal. It is a living testament that dignity is a real instrument of power, capable of altering perceptions, laws, and organizational culture. By choosing calm over anger, Ariana proved that true strength lies in steadfastness, integrity, and the ability to make others reevaluate their own actions. Most importantly, this message extends beyond boardrooms, gala halls, or financial markets. It reminds every individual that anyone can effect change if they stand tall, uphold self-respect, and confront injustice without yielding. If this story inspires you, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss more powerful stories of authority, dignity, and justice, and share it with your friends to spread the message that dignity can shake even the largest power structures. And before leaving the video, leave a comment with the phrase "dignity first" to show that you also believe that personal dignity and standards are the solid foundation for all decisions and positive change in society.